Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
What if your emotional life didn't have to feel like a constant reaction or a constant recovery? Welcome to the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, a global online clinic offering psychotherapy, coaching, integrative well-being services, and mind-body practices, all in one place. At International Awareness Integration Institute, we don't just talk about change, we train it. Our work is guided by awareness integration theory, an evidence-based psychological and educational model designed to reduce anxiety and depression patterns, strengthen emotional regulation, and help you build a life that feels meaningful, steady, and fulfilling. Whether you're navigating stress, relationship strain, burnout, life transitions, trauma symptoms, or simply the feeling that you've outgrown your old life, you'll find a clear path forward here, supported by licensed professionals and expert practitioners. If you're ready to feel better, think clearer, and live fully, join the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic today. Visit awarenessintegration.com and book your first session or join our membership.
Introducing a powerful new update from the Foojan app. Now with flexible subscription plans to fit your journey monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Our new AI-driven onboarding customizes your path to feeling better, faster, and enjoy a refreshed experience with stunning 3D interactive videos. Update now. Empower your inner voice with Foojan. Download today.
Most humans desire to belong to an uplifting, well-rounded human experience. And so Western has moved away from it for a variety of reasons. And it's working well for some Western and some Eastern, and it's not working well for some Western and some Eastern. And a thread that I think is worth us talking about is that human need to explore what doesn't work in order to build something that does. And in order to build something that does, often we have these big feelings of what it is we don't want.
Yes.
So loneliness, we don't want loneliness, and we also don't want enmeshment.
Yes.
And so then with those two things, we're like, well, what can I build?
Yes.
That eases my loneliness and isn't enmeshed? I'm going to build the new thing that is good for me. And us as a human species, we are builders, we're like beavers in their dams. We do like to make things and build things. And I think each one of us has a tangled problem we're trying to solve. I think that's part of our soul's journey.
If you've been doing your best, but still feel stuck in anxiety, relationship stress, or the weight of old patterns, this is where things begin to shift. At the Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, we offer something different. We provide two pathways forward. In psychotherapy, our licensed clinicians help heal unresolved trauma, reduce anxiety and depression, and navigate life transitions. In coaching, our certified coaches help you build confidence, leadership, and relationship mastery, turning insight into decisive action. Both are guided by Dr. Foojan Zeine's evidence-based awareness integration theory, a structured roadmap from awareness to integration to action. During our summit, save 25% on all services from March 22nd through 29th. Visit awarenessintegration.com to book your first session or request to be matched with the right provider.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
Welcome to Inner Voice. This is a heartfelt chat where we explore how to clear the past, create a new future, and live a fulfilled life now. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist, a life and a business coach, author, speaker, and the founder of the International Awareness Integration Institute. Each week, I bring you a heartfelt conversation about healing, self-awareness, relationship, mind, body, well-being, emotional clarity, and creating a life that feels true to who you are. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Meg Tuohey. She's a psychologist, relationship expert, author, and innovator in marriage repair. With decades of clinical experience, she helps women reconnect with themselves, understand their inner world, and navigate moments when relationships, identity, or life feel fractured. Her evidence-based neurodivergent affirming approach combines psychological rigor with compassion, honoring women's agency and inner authority. Meg has supported thousands of women and couples across the United States and Canada, although she's from Australia. Her podcast, Wisdom Stripes, has reached more than 1.8 million lifetime downloads and ranked among the top 15 education podcasts in the United States. Her first book, that we're also going to be talking about today, Heartprint, expands her mission of helping women create lives grounded in meaning, resilience, wisdom, and self-trust. My intention is that this conversation touches your heart, awakens your awareness, and gives you something meaningful to carry into your life. So let's begin. Here's Meg Tuohey.
Now, sometimes the mind understands, but the body still holds the stress. That's why the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic offers mind-body services that help you regulate your nervous system, restore calm, and return to yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally. Our reflective practices include guided mindfulness, breath work, yoga, and grounding exercises, and specifically curated to support emotional regulation and physiological calm. Our somatic integration practices are a refined body-led approach where healing begins with presence, working with breath, sensation, posture, and gentle movement so resilience becomes felt, not forced. And for those who want deeper whole person support, we offer functional well-being guidance, addressing the interplay between hormonal balance, digestion, sleep architecture, and lifestyle factors with a root cause holistic framework. This is not self-care as a luxury. This is self-regulation as a life skill and a pathway to fulfillment. Choose the support your body and life have been asking for. Visit awarenessintegration.com to join a weekly meditation, explore somatic healing, breathwork, yoga-inspired movement, or functional medicine services, and start feeling the difference. Meg Tuohey, it's so nice to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. Hello to our listeners.
What time is at your place? You're in Australia.
Well, if you came to me right now, I'd be getting ready to take you out to lunch tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, what are we, like 16 hours different?
16 or so hours different. I'm coming to you from the land down under.
Oh, wonderful. I love to come and see you over there. I've never been to Australia before, so.
Yeah. You are very well traveled though. Where have you been in this last little while? You've been on safari, you've been to Romania.
Yeah, Romania, safari, 10 days. I was doing research in Romania and then came back and, it was an amazing experience. I don't know, anybody who really loves animals, this should be on their bucket list and they should definitely go. So have you ever been to safari?
No, it's been on my radar too. I think it's in my future, and I don't think it's short term. I think it's medium term. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I went to Kenya and Tanzania and just amazing. The experience was out of this world. I truly, Meg, got a more of a appreciation about being on Earth and just with Earth itself, with the nature and who we are as species. It was really, really awesome. So I highly recommend it.
Very different to modern life, isn't it? It sort of takes us back to our primal ancestry. Yeah.
One thing that was interesting, and I feel like I got that also a lot about, as I was kind of looking at your book and, wanting to talk to you, this alignment that was there among all of these species. Sometimes we've always heard about the jungle world and it's a doggy dog world, and we're as human beings are just kind of copying what happens in the jungle. And I looked at the jungle and I'm like, there's like different species in alignment, cooperation, all with each other. And if the lion needs to have a prey, they'll just do what they need to because they're hungry, and then they leave it, and two other species are also feasting on the same thing. And if they're not hungry, the same species can be, the same animal can come in front of them, and they kind of like look at them, and the other one looks at each other, and they kind of like walk away. This was absolutely amazing for me to witness this alignment of just, the nature working for itself. Like every species was helping another and being cooperative with another. And it was amazing to see that.
Humans are not so different when we have the right conditions.
Yes.
It's when we're in a space where we don't have enough, or we're trying to make it in the modern kind of world, which doesn't allow us to be fully expressed who we are. So we use that kind of executive function of ours that the animal kingdom has far less of, and some aspects have none of. That allows us to override our natural instincts in order to survive. And I think, that's just a really tricky modern adaptation of human life, I think.
Yes, yes. And you shared about also, why is it that although there's almost 8 billion of us here, only human beings among all other species, that there's a sense of loneliness that is getting higher and higher across the globe. Like, the surveys always say, the research keeps saying that we keep growing. We have human beings more and more and more in our vicinity. And then yet internally, we're constantly feeling lonely.
Loneliness is such a sharp feeling in the chest, isn't it? So as you describe that, that's kind of what I feel in my heart sort of center. And my curious science brain goes to, well, is that really true if you look at Western versus Eastern, and those Eastern communities that live in a different way to our Western societies, where we're quite fragmented and displaced from emotional structures like family structures and family supports? And I don't know the answer to that. That's a curious question that came up for me. And then I go into the Western experience, which is my main understanding. And loneliness, I think, can be explained in so many different ways. And if we come back to where we started, we're just often, many of us are so far apart from nature because we need to be in order to survive in the current way that we say that we need to survive, this modern capitalist space. We're so busy trying to get resources and keep our loved ones safe and ourselves safe. There's very little room for us to be our true selves, and our true selves are quite community-based beings. And so I feel like if we could, we would, and if we don't, there's a really good reason why we're not.
There's also a level of connection that sometimes it's missing, that although the community is there. So you were talking about, the Eastern world versus Western world. And my background comes from the Eastern world and the concept of, family and community. And I think that the other side of it is that sometimes boundaries are not there, and they're so kind of enmeshed that people are trying to create in some sort of an internal boundary for themselves, because if they can't do it in a societal boundary, they'll do it internally. And then internally, you still feel lonely, because although there's a lot of rules and regulations around the community to be accepted within the community that's there, then they'll feel lonely, because if the experience internally is not similar to what it's supposed to be externally, they'll still feel lonely. So it's interesting that each one of the cultures have its own element. So the loneliness is still something that I'm assuming, and I want you to share with me. It's a little bit about when I don't have a sense of belonging or a sense of cohesiveness with either one person that I think I matter or they matter to me or other people. And that creates that type of a separation.
It is a wonderful conversation we're having. And, to do real justice to it, you and I might need to camp in this recording for 2 weeks because there are so many nuances that are at play for why loneliness is the way it is. And if we go down the path of looking at the human experience from what I would call a meta view, then one aspect, I think, is the soul's path, the human need for evolution. And loneliness is going to require us to grow and figure out how to build structures that better serve us. So what I loved is your explanation of Eastern, and I'm so grateful for it, because that makes perfect sense to me about why people might move away from those systems. And yet we also know that when they work well, most humans desire to belong to an uplifting, well-rounded human experience. And so Western has moved away from it for a variety of reasons. And it's working well for some Western and some Eastern, and it's not working well for some Western and some Eastern. And a thread that I think is worth us talking about is that human need to explore what doesn't work in order to build something that does. And in order to build something that does, often we have these big feelings of what it is we don't want.
Yeah.
So loneliness, we don't want loneliness, and we also don't want enmeshment.
Yes.
And so then with those two things, we're like, well, what can I build
Yes.
that eases my loneliness and isn't enmeshed? I'm going to build the new thing that is good for me. And us as a human species, we are builders, we're like beavers in their dams. We do like to make things and build things. And I think each one of us has a tangled problem we're trying to solve. I think that's part of our soul's journey. And for those of us tasked with loneliness as our main headline, then we're working in that space. There are lots of other headlines, though, aren't there? Because all of us is working on something hard, and loneliness is one of those pieces.
I totally agree with you. This morning, I was talking to a client, and she said she's moving toward the phase of, her parents are very becoming elderly, and kind of she's realizing she's losing them. Her kids are going to college. She's realizing she's losing them. And it was interesting to see that in her transitional space from one phase of life to another, there's a space that she felt lonely because it's not known anymore. And it's in between transition of one area to another and getting ready for the new area, which is kind of unknown. There was the word lonely that showed up again. It was, I feel lonely because I don't know what this experience is. And it's almost like I got to walk through this all by myself and experience and grow, which is something you just share. Like, this is what we got to go through in order to grow.
Yeah.
I don't want us to not have the time to talk about Heartprint, to unlock wisdom of you. And I think we're talking about it in a different way, a roundabout way, because the conversation of unlock the wisdom of you, you might have to ponder and look inside and sometimes go through the loneliness to find the wisdom of you. Share about you and how you came about wanting to, share your wisdom through this book.
Yeah, this book is a lovely story, and it also has some role modeling and some self-reflection to grow that connection that we have with our inner wise woman, our inner wise person. And I believe that all of us are working to come home to who we really are, and that the troubles that we have in life, be it loneliness or another topic heading kind of at an equivalent level, the thing that we have to work on this life is the opportunity to build that relationship with self and to grow the wisdom and collect the answers and antidotes whilst we're here having this human experience. And so heartprint is recognizing that each of us is as unique as a fingerprint. And even if you and I and a fictitious imaginary sister of ours, we were triplets that were identical with our DNA, the three of us would have very different heartprints. We're here to do different things, even though we come from the same family system, the same DNA. We are going to express our life based on our heartprint. And so my book is about how do you literally build a relationship with your inner wisdom as though she is your wise woman who can help guide you through your full expression of self. And it covers the story of Ellie, who is human like us, as she goes through her life to make that relationship, to find and create that relationship. And then at the end, we see how that shapes her family that she has had, her son and her grandchildren. And that is the impact of eldership and wisdom, which are two of my favorite things to talk about. When we restore eldership and wisdom, we change the experience of the people who come after us. And that to me is one of the most important aspects of my work and why I wrote Heartprint.
And what is your heartprint? What are you here for?
I'm actually here doing exactly what I need to be doing. So my job this life, I'm not quite sure why. My heartprint is to be a lighthouse, to be someone who offers the things that I've gathered and that I have learned, either through my education as a psychologist or through my life experiences. My job is to offer things that allow people, actually, let me rephrase that, to offer a container for people to explore who they really are. And from there, know how to start taking steps into that wholeness of self so that their insides match their outsides. Because when there is not much of a gap between who I really am and how I'm living my life, the smaller the gap, the greater the access to contentment, satisfaction, and fulfillment. And those things really matter. They matter for antidotes against loneliness, which all of us humans will have. They're also really strengthening protective factors, and they're things we want our kids to have access to and our loved ones. And so for me, working in this space can change systems of people, and that's my heartprint.
How did you find the wisdom of you?
It's a really good question. I think it starts with a really tricky context. I have my own podcast. It's called Wisdom Stripes, and it is about restoring eldership. And I think that's because I came from not enough of what I needed. I had good people behind me from a family of origin perspective, and I came out different. I came out in a perplexing way to most of my family, and I really needed the elders. And each time I reached for them, they weren't there. And so I hit this point where I just started going to find elders to fill in the gaps and to make sense of my life, my experiences, and my heartprint. And in doing so, I built my own eldership and started work in the space of developing women in the same way.
Is there a reason why you chose women as a...
Yeah, well, I have a background in organizational psychology. And so I looked at doing this kind of work in corporates. And I was like, that's not quite the right thing for me. And so then I looked at wanting to change a family system because I come from a tricky family system. And it felt laborious to do the two people at the top of a family system. And I was like, who has the most cultural leadership and weight in a family system? And for me, the answer was, it's our women. It's our women that lead and drive cultural change, and that's my jam. And so that seemed like a natural fit.
When you were talking about the wisdom, and I asked you a question, how did you get to your wisdom? I also asked myself at that moment, how did I find my wisdom? And
Yeah.
It's interesting, the thought that showed up for me is, it seems like there's a part of me that has always known and has done things, that affected my, an intuitive way, or a wise concept that was there for me, that was guiding me. I remember the first therapist that I went to, he said, it's funny because you look like this little girl who was constantly disciplining herself, right? I left my country to come to US when I was 12. So it was almost like raising myself. And it was like, and possibly taking what you said, which is, did I want the elders? The elders weren't there, but there was a concept of what they would have said, or even within the notion of what I had seen, that I had interjected it. And it was disciplining me and holding that wisdom in many of those angles as I kind of raised myself without knowing. And it was interesting that sometimes it's such a subconscious process to go through that, that when I look back, I can see how much subconsciously that piece worked, where then I could make it conscious later on, to keep looking at it and actually making it a conscious choice in hearing myself, the different parts of myself, and seeing which one is the wise part that is listening and that I should be listening to, because it's, like you said, it aligns from the internal to the external. And when there isn't an alignment, we know, because there's there's a disconnection, there's a eerie feeling that sometimes don't listen to it because there's a benefit that I want to get at that moment. But there's the alignment that you talked about internally and externally has an experience to it, that when we become aware of that experience, you could really feel it and then acknowledge it and then listen to it. That has been my experience. How can you describe that for you?
I think the word that I would use to describe what you describe and how I would is attunement. And it is that knowingness, being attuned to that inner knowingness that says, I'm out of balance somewhere in my body, my mind, my emotions, my spirit, my behaviors, for example. And so when you live in a human suit, it is a complicated thing. And it is not possible to live in coherence and congruence 100% of the time. And it's one of the things I teach, is we're looking for 80%, and that is good enough. You are going to do human things. Human things is our kind of nature aspect of us. We started with this conversation about the safari. We are not that far removed from nature, and yet we totally are, and yet it still lives in us. And so there is this need to acknowledge that 80% of the time is actually quite high to be able to live in coherence or congruence or alignment with yourself and your inner wisdom. That's actually quite still a high bar. And if you're listening, you might be like, I'm at 20% or 30%. And what I tend to find is because I work with people who are in high levels of crisis, and we get them to solid ground. And one of the ways and we do that is around through this work of heartprint and returning people to who they really are and matching their internal and external worlds and allowing them to grow from that coherence. And that part of them is going to create a life that's really good for them. The thing is, though, is they often come in, and being in crisis puts you in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop, puts you in overwhelm, puts you in burnout, puts you in depression or anxiety. And those spaces are not your aligned, congruent self. They are the coping mechanisms of the human experience. And there is nothing wrong with coping. In fact, we need us to cope. And it's not sustainable. It's going to keep you safe for a little while. And when you want to build your way out towards a life that matches you, we have to be able to drop that physiology, or lift in the cases of depression, lift that physiology back into that inner wisdom space. So being able to know when you're in alignment and congruence or flow state with yourself is another way of putting it, and expand that as your emotional home that you come back to 80% of the time. That's where the magic lives. And I can tell that you know that.
Yeah, I've experienced it, but I was going to ask you from your perspective to share how do we get there to the flow state? Because
Yeah.
like you said, we are human, so we're going to go
Yeah.
back and forth. We're not going to be always on equilibrium. We're going to be, the equilibrium is going to go right and left and right and left and right and left, and until we find and barely we come to that equilibrium, and then another, whether it's an internal something that happens for our own development or an external situation that happens that gets us up and down, and then coming back to that equilibrium.
Yeah.
Like I found the key that kicks me back into equilibrium for me, but I wanted to share, ask you to share, how do you suggest for people to find this level of, balance and the flow that you were talking about as well?
Look, there are lots of ways to do flow, and one easy way that I'm going to talk about maybe in more depth is to remember the last time you found flow state. So for me, I always find it in my work, and the definition of flow is that you're in your circle or your sphere where you're like very good at something and you're playing in that space, and there is just a little stretch that allows you to have a little bit of jeopardy. Like, can I apply this skill to this new thing? And that is where we find flow. And it lasts 45 minutes-ish. And that experience is like, okay, that's how you get your on-ramp of flow. Now, flow is a bit of a performance physiology. And so we don't want to be necessarily in that peak physiology because that's not realistic. I want you, though, to remember the last time you were in flow and you were juggling balls and things were just working. It was happening. You could handle anything. That is a good place to start if we replicate that for you and you get to experience that every day. Imagine being able to access flow every day on purpose. That's where we start. Then, as you get used to that, we start to find it in less of a performance way. And performance, I mean by, because that sounds like work, and then it's stretchy. And so that, there's like a lot of energy used to do that. It's just a good way to get going. And then we want to bring it down to an everyday physiology where you start to be able to access it in your daily life chores or admin, where you allow yourself the gift of a body that feels at peace. It feels like it's got good enough energy to be able to do the things you want to do. And then you allow yourself the gift of finding that. So it might be through music, it might be through exercise, it might be through a thoughtful, curated experience that lights up your heart. We find it in those other ways. And then when you start to understand what it is, then we slowly start to expand it so you have more and more access to it. And the more access you have to it, the more you're conditioning that as your emotional home. What we haven't named, though, which is important to name, is that your beautiful brain will be so happy to be in that space. It will start working for you to have more of that. So we'll start bringing you the things that aren't working in your life that are in the way of you expanding it. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, why do I have to think about this thing from 1984? Why is that on my mind? I haven't thought about this before. And that's just your body, your mind, trying to partner with you. And so our job then is to start to do the work of that partnership, because it is like, this thing's going to get in our way and you're well enough to work on it now. So I want to work on this. That's why I'm bringing it to your conscious attention. And we can often read that as a bad thing. I like to frame it as a partnership opportunity.
Mine is, I think, is where I have learned to let go of needing to control. And it's shifted from a place of a trust that whatever knowledge I do have, whatever skill that I have, I already have access to. So instead of attempting to control things inside and out, just allow a space of like love and acceptance of me and what is, so that I can trust and get out of my own way, in a sense, get out of my own way. So whatever is in here and internally can express itself and collaborate with the outside as it shows up. But I think, right before the show, we started with that conversation a little bit, in a sense, because of the time differences, and me, we didn't get to meet at the time that we said we were going to meet, and we had to shift. And we started the conversation of, if we just get out of the control aspect, it shows up and it all gets connected and we need to get connected, and we did. So instead of a Monday, we connected on a Tuesday. So that's exactly my experience of how I've learned to get myself into the flow state.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it is a relational with self process. So the ways I've described it, some parts might resonate for our listeners and other parts might be like, I'm all in. And still others are like, oh, that's not quite me. And to that I say, take the intent of what I'm sharing with you and consider that the container. And then you need to find the things that work for you, because partnering with your inner wisdom is a relationship with self-development.
Yes.
And if you think about making a friend, it's 100 hours to make a friend. And most of us have not spent 100 hours cultivating a relationship turned towards ourselves. And yet, how we relate to ourselves is the foundation of what we're able to relate to with others. So first always is my interaction with self. So the opportunity here, with no pressure, is what might it look like if I turned toward myself with that level of attunement and allowed myself the gift of finding some flow today. Something that where I felt good and I felt congruent with my body, mind, spirit, emotions, and I had some relief. How might I do that? And then how might I access that again tomorrow? And then what might I do with that relationship with my inner wisdom? And that's where Heartprint comes in, because it's a really straightforward way of cultivating that relationship with self. And it's done in a role modeled kind of way. So if you can't find that inner wisdom just yet, you can borrow our wise woman, her name is Elizabeth, in our book, in my book, so that she can step in for you whilst you are cultivating that 100 hours to become truly a dear friend of your own.
Beautiful. Anything we haven't shared that you really want people to know?
I think the thing is this relationship is waiting for you. This relationship with self is right there for you. It might feel overwhelming. It might feel unfamiliar. It might feel painful. And you can sort of, if you allow yourself to be carried in the current of the energy of this conversation, if you could imagine a hand kind of outstretched towards you, that is your own inner wisdom waiting for you to come home. And that is available to all of us today. And life only gets better in partnership with yourself. And when you actually experience that with yourself, and it becomes sort of second nature, almost by osmosis, the people around you understand what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, and start to cultivate that for themselves. It's one of the greatest intergenerational transfers of wisdom we can offer. And so my invitation to you is to return home to who you really are.
Sweet. Everyone, get this book, Heartprint, Unlock the Wisdom of You, How to Live a Life That Feels Good by Meg Tuohey. How can people find you?
You can find me on all the channels, and particularly Instagram at Meg Tuohey Official. And I'd love to see you there.
Great. And the website is?
Yes, megantuohey.com.
megantuohey.com. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had so much fun that I interrupted you. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you. And goodbye for now.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you for joining me for another heartfelt conversation, The Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan. If today's episode touched you, I invite you to take 3 simple actions. So follow Inner Voice on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or YouTube. Share this episode with one person who may need hope, clarity, or support, or learn how to create and connect to their wisdom. Leave a kind rating or recommendation on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, or Spotify so more people can find these healing conversations. You can connect with me at awarenessintegration.com or IAII Life or any of the social media and learn more about therapy, coaching, mind-body services, functional medicine groups, the Foojan app, the Mira, and all of that. And through the International Awareness Integration Institute. Until next time, listen to your inner voice, lead with awareness, and live a fulfilled life now.
Awareness, integration theory, certification programs. If you're a psychotherapist, clinician, or coach ready to elevate your impact, I invite you to become certified in the Awareness Integration Theory, AIT model. AIT is a structured, evidence-informed approach that strengthens emotional regulation, reduces anxiety and depression patterns, and helps clients create lasting change. Our training is practical, clear, and immediately usable in sessions, so you can work with more confidence and consistency. Join a global community of practitioners shaping the future of integrative mental health. Become AIT certified today. Visit awarenessintegration.com.